My name is Dorothy Sterling, though everyone in this county has called me Dot since the dust storms of the 1930s. I am 103 years old. I have outlived 2 husbands, 3 houses, and a world that used to make sense. I was born in a time when the air smelled of wood smoke and horses, and I have lived long enough to see a world where people communicate through glass screens and invisible waves. But I didn't reach this incredible milestone by drinking green smoothies or counting my steps on a plastic watch. I got here by being stubborn. I got here by trusting the soil more than the laboratory. And I got here by eating a menu so controversial that it would make a modern nutritionist faint in the middle of a grocery store. I'm sitting here in my kitchen, a room that has seen the joys and the tragedies of a century, and I'm about to reveal something that will shake the very foundation of everything you think you know about health. I eat the same 4 foods every single day. I have adhered to this exact, unwavering regimen for the last 40 years. No variety, no exotic superfruit powders, and not a single cheat day. But before I show you what's on my plate, I want you to do something for me. I want you to think about the experts you've been listening to. Those polished, healthy-looking people on your television and your phone who tell you that fat is a sin and eggs are a death sentence. Dot Sterling has outlived every medical professional who tried to fix her dangerous diet, and today she is breaking down the exact 4-food menu that has kept her mind sharp and her body strong for over a century. If you are tired of being lied to by the billion-dollar health industry and want the raw truth about longevity, you need to hear this, because this is a story the doctors literally didn't live long enough to tell. In my 100+ years on this earth, I have buried 7 of my own doctors, 7 men who were considered the pinnacle of medical intelligence. They had the degrees from the most expensive universities in the world, hanging in heavy, dark frames on their office walls. They had the crisp white coats that smelled of starch and high-grade antiseptic. They had that specific practiced tone of voice, the one they reserve for elderly women, a tone that drips with a polite but firm condescension, as if they are explaining the world to a toddler. Every single one of them sat me down in a cold, sterile examination room and told me I was killing myself. I remember Dr. Harrison back in the autumn of 1982. He was a man in his prime, a dedicated distance runner who prided himself on eating nothing but dry oats, steamed spinach, and skinless poultry. He looked at my blood work, his face turning a shade of frustrated dark crimson, and told me that my cholesterol was a ticking time bomb. He described my arteries as if they were old, rusted plumbing pipes in a condemned building, clogged with the very life I was putting into my body. He handed me a color-coded chart, vibrant green for the good foods that tasted like wet cardboard, and a terrifying red for the proteins and fats that actually sustain a human soul. He spoke to me slowly, enunciating every syllable, trying to scare me into submission. He told me, "Dot, if you don't change your ways immediately, you won't live to see the turn of the century." Well, the year 2000 came and went 24 years ago. And do you know where Dr. Harrison is today? He's in a quiet plot at Cedar Hill. He died at 68 years old from a massive coronary event right in the middle of his morning jog. I'm still here at 103. I'm still standing at my heavy, seasoned cast-iron skillet every single morning. I'm still tending to my roses without needing a cane. And I'm still eating the very foods he promised would put me in the dirt. The experts are gone. Their charts have turned to dust with them. But Dot is still kicking. And it's all because I realized a long time ago that the medical science of today is often just the medical embarrassment of tomorrow. I've watched the experts change their minds more often than I've changed my kitchen curtains. One year eggs are poison, the next they're a miracle. One year butter is a killer, the next it's a health food. I decided 40 years ago to stop being a laboratory rat for their theories. I chose a path. I found what made my body feel like a well-oiled machine, and I never looked back. Let's talk about the first pillar of my survival. Every single morning as the sun begins to crawl over the horizon and the birds start their chatter in the oak trees, I crack 3 whole eggs into a skillet. Now I want you to pay attention to that word, whole. For the better part of 40 years, the medical establishment has been trying to convince the American public that the yolk of an egg is a little yellow pellet of pure poison. They told us to throw it away. They told us to eat the whites, that flavorless, translucent slime, and discard the very part of the egg where the life actually resides. It's one of the greatest lies ever sold to the public, and it's a lie that has made us weaker, dumber, and more dependent on the pharmacy. Think about the logic for a moment. An egg is a self-contained miracle. Within that shell is every single nutrient, every vitamin, and every fat required to turn a single cell into a living, breathing, feathered creature with a heart, a brain, and eyes. It is a complete blueprint for life. And yet we have people in lab coats telling us that we should throw away the engine and just eat the upholstery. It's like buying a Cadillac and throwing the V8 engine in the trash because you're afraid of the noise it makes. I fry my 3 eggs in real salted butter, not margarine, never margarine. Margarine is a chemical nightmare. A gray sludge that was invented in a lab and dyed yellow to trick your eyes into thinking it's food. If you leave a stick of butter out on the porch, the ants and the flies will find it in minutes because they know it's life. If you leave a tub of margarine out there, even the bugs won't touch it. They know it's plastic. And yet we've been told for decades that the plastic is heart healthy, while the butter is a killer. I remember back in 1963 when the cholesterol craze really started to dig its claws into the public consciousness. I was in my early 40s then, and I watched as the women in my neighborhood started throwing out their butter dishes and replacing them with those plastic tubs. They started eating egg white omelets that looked like folded napkins and tasted like nothing at all. They were all trying to outrun death by avoiding the very things that give the body strength. My friend Martha was the worst of them. She was obsessed with purity. She followed every government guideline, every magazine tip, and every doctor's warning. She lived on dry toast and heart-smart spreads. Martha passed away at 65, her mind riddled with fog and her bones as brittle as dry twigs. Meanwhile, I was 75, still hauling hay and eating my 3 eggs fried in butter every single day. The yolk is where the lecithin is. It's where the choline is, the stuff your brain needs to remember where you put your keys and the names of your great-grandchildren. People ask me how I can still tell stories from the 1920s with such clarity. I tell them it's because my brain isn't starved of fat. Your brain is mostly fat, dear. If you stop eating it, your mind starts to wither. I've watched it happen to so many people who thought they were being healthy. They traded their memories for a lower number on a blood test, and in the end, the number didn't save them. I cook my eggs in a cast-iron skillet that is older than most of the people watching this. It's seasoned with a century of meals. I don't use those non-stick pans with the chemical coatings that flake off into your food. I want the iron. I want the heat. I want the sizzle. When those eggs hit the butter, the smell that fills my kitchen isn't just breakfast. It's the smell of resilience. It's the smell of a woman who refused to be told that God's design was a mistake. I eat the yolks, I eat the whites, and I soak up every bit of that golden butter with a piece of crusty bread. I've been pulling that trigger 3 times a day for nearly a century, and I'm still standing here. And if you're sitting there wondering if you should take Mabel's advice, or the advice of a man who hasn't lived half as long as she has, just remember this: the proof isn't in the pamphlet. The proof is in the person. I'm 103 and I'm not done yet. After my eggs have settled and I've spent my morning tending to the garden, I move on to the second pillar of my day, food number 2. Every single day, without fail, I consume 1 pound of ground beef. I prefer the 80-20 blend, 80% lean and 20% fat. I don't want that extra lean meat that looks like gray sawdust when you cook it. I want the fat, because the fat is where the energy hides. For 40 years, I've had doctors looking at me like I was a criminal for this. They told me red meat causes cancer. They told me it would rot in my gut, spike my blood pressure, and probably cause me to spontaneously combust before I hit 80. I remember sitting across from a young specialist in the 90s. He couldn't have been a day over 30. With skin that looked like he'd never seen a sunrise. He told me, "Doc, at your age you should be moving toward a plant-based existence. Red meat is an inflammatory disaster." I looked him square in the eye and said, "Son, my grandmother ate beef every day of her life and lived to see 96. My mother did the same and made it to 94. I've been eating it since the Great Depression, when a burger was a luxury we'd pray for. None of us got cancer. None of us had heart disease. Maybe you should spend less time studying those poor rats you keep feeding sugar to in your labs and start studying the women in my family." He didn't have an answer for that. He just shook his head and wrote another prescription I never filled. You see, the world has become afraid of the very things that built us. Your body is a machine made of protein and minerals. Your muscles, your blood, your neurotransmitters, and your bones are all constructed from the same materials found in that pound of beef. I don't use fancy recipes. I don't need 47 ingredients from 3 different continents. I take that ground beef, put it in my cast-iron skillet, and hit it with a generous amount of salt. That's it. Why beef? because a cow is a miracle of biological engineering. It takes grass, something humans can't even digest, and it turns it into the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. It concentrates sunshine, soil, and water into iron, B12, zinc, creatine, and carnitine. People spend $50 a bottle at health stores for those supplements, but I get them fresh from the skillet for a fraction of the price. I've watched the world go through the cereal phase, where everyone thought a box of processed grains with a cartoon character on the front was a healthy breakfast. Then I watched the soy phase and the fake meat phase, where they try to engineer something in a factory to look like a steak. It's all vanity. It's all designed to sell you something that's been stripped of its soul. When I eat my beef, I feel a strength that most people my age, and frankly people half my age, have forgotten exists. I don't get afternoon slumps. I don't get brain fog. I don't feel like I'm fading away. I feel solid. I feel anchored to the earth. I remember during the war, meat was rationed. We had to have stamps for it. People were desperate for a taste of real protein because they knew, deep down in their bones, that a human being can't run on crackers and tea for long. Now, we live in a time of absolute abundance, and people are choosing to starve themselves of the very thing their ancestors fought to provide. I cook my beef until it's browned and crispy on the edges. I eat it slowly. I savor the salt and the fat. Doctors can't explain why my heart is as strong as an old oak tree, but I can. I gave my heart the fuel it needed to keep beating. I didn't starve it of the saturated fats that every cell membrane in my body is literally made of. If you want to know why you feel tired at 35, or why your joints ache at 40, stop looking at your tracking apps and look at your plate. Are you eating something that was grown in the sun, or something that was extruded through a machine in a warehouse? I chose the sun. I chose the cow. And at 103, I'm still the one standing at the finish line while the joggers are all catching their breath. Now we come to food number 3. This is the one that really gets the modern health gurus screaming. Every single day I eat 6 small red potatoes, boiled with the skins left on. In this day and age, carbs have become the new boogeyman. People talk about potatoes as if they're eating poison-tipped arrows. They count their net carbs and glycemic indexes with a look of pure terror on their faces, convinced that a single potato is going to lead them straight to a diabetes diagnosis. Well, I've been eating my 6 potatoes since before most of those gurus were a glint in their father's eye. I remember the 1990s vividly. That was when the low-carb craze really took hold of the country. Suddenly, the humble potato, which had sustained humanity for centuries, was stripped of its dignity. My daughter tried to get me on one of those diets, some plan where you ate nothing but bacon and celery. I tried it for 3 weeks, and I felt like I had been hit by a freight train. I was irritable, my legs felt like lead, and I couldn't think straight enough to finish a crossword puzzle. I sat her down and said, "Honey, this isn't health. This is a slow-motion starvation." I went right back to my garden, dug up a handful of reds, and boiled them. Within an hour, the light came back into my world. You want to know what a potato actually is? It's a battery. It is energy stored directly from the ground. It is the fuel that kept the Irish alive through centuries of hardship. It is what kept the soldiers moving in the trenches of World War II. It's what kept my own family from fading away during the darkest years of the Depression, when we didn't have much else but a patch of dirt and some seeds. People nowadays are so afraid of their food. They track every bite on a little screen in their pocket, weighing their meals on tiny scales like they're running a high-stakes drug operation in their kitchen. They've lost the joy of eating because they've replaced it with the math of survival. I don't need an app to tell me how I feel. I eat my 6 potatoes and I feel the steady, slow-burn energy that allows me to stay on my feet from 5 in the morning until the sun goes down. I leave the skins on because that's where the life is. That's where the minerals hide. That's where the fiber is that keeps your digestion moving like a Swiss watch. Most people peel the best part away and throw it in the trash, then go to the store and buy a bottle of multivitamins to replace what they just threw out. It's a circus, I tell you. I cook them simple, just water and a bit of salt. No heavy creams, no processed cheese sauces, no loaded toppings that come from a jar. Just the potato. When you eat simply, your body knows exactly what to do with it. My grandmother did the same thing every day of her life, and she lived to 96 with all her original teeth and a mind as sharp as a tack. She used to say that the earth gives you everything you need if you're just humble enough to eat it without trying to improve it. Doctors tell me I should be worried about my blood sugar. They see 6 potatoes and they start reaching for the insulin needles. But then they run my tests and they go quiet. My blood sugar is as stable as a mountain. Why? Because I don't eat sugar. I don't eat low-fat snacks that are pumped full of corn syrup to make them palatable. I eat real complex energy from the soil. The potato isn't your enemy. The factory that turns the potato into a chip, fries it in industrial seed oil, and coats it in chemical powder, that is your enemy. But a red potato boiled in its skin, that's a gift. It's the strength of the earth, and at 103, it's the reason I can still outwalk people 40 years younger than me. Now we come to the fourth and perhaps the most controversial pillar of my daily life. With every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I drink a tall, cool glass of raw milk. I'm talking about milk straight from the cow, unpasteurized, unhomogenized, and completely unscrewed with. This is the one that truly makes the doctor's hair stand on end. Whenever I mention it in a medical office, the room goes silent, and they start looking at me as if I've admitted to drinking liquid dynamite. Dot, they say, their voices hushed and urgent, raw milk is dangerous. It's teeming with bacteria. You could get salmonella, E. coli, or heaven knows what else. It's a miracle you haven't been hospitalized. I usually just lean back in my chair and give them a little smile. Son, I say, I've been drinking milk this way since I was 6 years old. That's 97 years of supposedly dangerous milk. I'm still waiting for the danger to show up. I've outlived your predecessor, and I'll likely outlive you too. Maybe the bacteria and I have worked out a peace treaty. You see, the modern world has become terrified of the word bacteria. We live in a society that wants to bleach, scrub, and boil every single living organism out of our environment. We want everything sterile, dead, and wrapped in plastic. But here's the secret the experts don't want to admit. Your body is more bacteria than it is human. Your gut is a garden, and if you stop planting seeds and pulling weeds, the garden dies. When you take milk and you pasteurize it, heating it to such high temperatures that it kills everything inside, you aren't just killing the bad stuff. You're killing the enzymes. You're killing the probiotics. You're killing the very things that help your body digest the milk in the first place. That's why everyone nowadays thinks they're lactose intolerant. Their bodies aren't rejecting the milk. They're rejecting the dead water that the store calls milk. Real milk, raw milk, is alive. It has a layer of thick yellow cream that rises to the top, a layer that people used to fight over when I was a girl. It tastes like the clover and the grass the cow ate. It's thick, it's rich, and it's full of fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, and K2 that your heart and bones are literally begging for. What they sell in the grocery store today is a Frankenstein's monster. They cook it, they separate it, they homogenize it, which is just a fancy way of saying they shatter the fat molecules so small that they can't rise to the top. And then they put it back together and call it a health food. I call it expensive white water. I remember when the government started making it illegal to sell raw milk in some places. They told us it was for our own protection. But I grew up on a farm where we drank it every day, warm from the bucket. No one got sick. No one had gut issues. We were strong, we were hardy, and we had immune systems that could handle a bit of dirt. Nowadays, children grow up in houses that smell like bleach, eating food that's been sterilized into oblivion, and they get a cold if someone sneezes 3 blocks away. I drink my milk because it keeps my joints lubricated and my bones as hard as granite. I fell down my porch steps 3 years ago at 100 years old, and you know what happened? I got a bruise. That's it. No broken hip, no shattered wrist. The doctors couldn't believe it. They kept looking at my x-rays, convinced they'd missed something. But I knew why. My bones are built from a century of raw cream and real calcium, not some chalky supplement in a plastic bottle. My gut is healthy because I haven't spent my life trying to kill the germs. I've spent my life feeding the good ones. Every glass of that white gold is a dose of nature's medicine. It's thick, it's honest, and it's been the foundation of my health since the days of the horse and buggy. If you're afraid of your food, you're already halfway to the grave. I'm not afraid. I'm 103. I'm nourished. And I'm still drinking the milk that the world says should have killed me a century ago. People often ask me if I ever get bored eating the same things day in and day out. They look at me with pity, as if my life is some kind of culinary prison. They imagine a world of blandness and repetition, a life devoid of the excitement of a new restaurant opening or a trendy recipe from a magazine. I always tell them the same thing. Boredom is a luxury for people who aren't busy living. You see, modern life is a frantic scramble of choices. You wake up and you have to decide between 60 types of cereal, 40 brands of coffee, and 1,000 different breakfast options delivered to your door by a stranger on a scooter. You spend your mental energy, the very fuel your brain needs for the day, on things that don't matter. By 10 o'clock in the morning, you've made 100 decisions about food, and you're already exhausted. I don't have that problem. My life is built on a foundation of simplicity that gives me the freedom to actually be present in the world. I don't waste a single second of my 103-year-old brain power wondering what I'm going to eat. I know exactly what's happening in my kitchen, and that certainty is a form of peace that most people today will never understand. Here is how a day on Dot's plate actually looks. Breakfast is at 6 a.m. The house is still quiet, the air is cool, and the first light is just hitting the kitchen floor. I take my cast iron skillet, melt a thick slab of butter, and crack my first 3 eggs. I boil 2 of my red potatoes. I pour a tall glass of raw milk. That's my fuel for the garden. That's what gives me the strength to pull weeds, prune the roses, and carry the watering can without my back screaming at me. Lunch is at 12 p.m. I take half a pound of that 80-20 ground beef, brown it in the skillet with nothing but salt, and boil another 2 potatoes. Another glass of milk. This is the midday anchor. It keeps my blood sugar steady so I don't get that afternoon slump that sends younger people reaching for a candy bar or a 3rd cup of coffee. While they're nodding off at their desks, I'm out in the shed sharpening my shears or walking down to the mailbox. Dinner is at 5:30 p.m. I repeat the lunch menu, the remaining half pound of beef and the last 2 potatoes. 1 more glass of milk. This is my final brick in the wall. It's heavy, it's honest, and it digests slowly while I sleep, keeping my body warm and my heart beating steady through the night. No snacks, no dessert, no midnight cravings. Why would I crave anything? My body has every vitamin, mineral, fat, and protein it could ever ask for. Cravings are just your body's way of screaming that you're starving for nutrients while you're stuffed with empty calories. I'm never stuffed, but I'm always satisfied. I've watched the world become obsessed with variety. They say you need 47 different plants a week. They say you need superfoods from the Amazon and ancient grains from the mountains. It's all a marketing shell game. Your ancestors didn't have variety. A farmer's wife in 1880 ate what was in the cellar and what was in the coop. She ate eggs, salt pork, potatoes, and bread. And she worked 18 hours a day, raised 10 children, and lived until the wheels fell off. She was strong because her food was real, not because it was diverse. The excitement in my life doesn't come from my plate. It comes from the fact that at 103, I can still see the smile on my great-grandson's face without squinting. It comes from the fact that I can still smell the jasmine on the breeze. It comes from being alive, awake, and aware. I traded the excitement of a varied diet for the excitement of a functional body. To me, that's the best deal I ever made. People spend their 30s and 40s sick, tired, and medicated, all while eating exciting food. I'm over a century old. I don't take a single prescription pill, and I feel like I could walk 5 miles if the weather was right. Now, I'm going to tell you the part that really stings, the part the doctors and the food companies definitely don't want you to hear. It's about why they want you confused, why they want you chasing variety, and how they've turned your kitchen into a profit center for their pharmaceutical companies. To understand why the world looks at my plate with such horror, you have to understand the crime that was committed back in the 1950s. I was a young woman then, raising my family and keeping my home, and I watched the robbery happen in real time. Before then, nobody questioned butter. Nobody was afraid of lard. We knew that animal fat was what made you strong. It was what made the gravy rich and the children hardy. But then the experts arrived. I remember the shift. It was like a thick gray fog rolling over the American dinner table. A few scientists in white lab coats, backed by the big food companies that were just starting to flex their muscles, decided that fat was the enemy. They didn't have proof, not real honest-to-God proof, but they had a lot of loud voices and fancy charts. They told us that the butter we had been eating for centuries was suddenly the reason for heart disease. They told us the eggs our grandmothers gathered were vessels of cholesterol that would clog our veins before we could finish breakfast. It was the birth of the low-fat era, and it was the day common sense died in this country. I watched as the local grocery stores started filling up with vegetable oils, bottles of yellow liquid made from corn and soybeans that had been crushed, bleached, and deodorized in a factory. They told us these heart-healthy oils were better for us than the tallow and butter we'd always used. I remember opening a bottle of that oil and smelling nothing. It was dead. It was an industrial lubricant dressed up in a pretty label. And what happened when we stopped eating fat? We got hungry. You see, fat is what tells your brain you've had enough. When you take the fat out of the diet, the body screams for energy, and the food companies were right there to give us the solution: sugar and processed grains. They replaced the butter with margarine and the eggs with boxed cereal. They took the cream out of the milk and replaced it with non-fat solids and corn syrup. I stayed in the schoolrooms back then, teaching the next generation, and I saw the change in the children. They became softer. They became more restless. They couldn't focus the way the kids in the 40s could. We were traded a bill of goods. We were told that if we followed these new rules, we would live forever without a heart attack. But look around you today. Does the world look healthy to you? We have more diabetes, more cancer, and more heart disease than we ever did when we were eating lard and drinking whole milk. The great fat lie didn't save us. It made us a nation of sick, tired, and profitable customers for the medical industry. I remember my husband Robert, God rest his soul. He was a man who loved his steak. When the doctors started pestering him in the 70s to switch to lean meats and heart-healthy grains, he looked at them like they had two heads. He said, "I've spent my life working a farm and a factory on beef and butter. I'm not about to start eating like a bird just because you found a new theory." Robert made it to 95, and he never once touched a piece of margarine. He died with a full head of hair and a grip that could still crush a walnut. The experts doubled down on their mistake, Instead of admitting they were wrong about the fat, they just invented more diets. They gave us the food pyramid, which told us to eat 6 to 11 servings of bread and pasta a day. To me, that looked like a recipe for a bloated belly and a foggy brain. I ignored it. I kept my skillet hot and my beef seasoned. You have to realize that there is no money in a healthy person. A healthy person doesn't buy 12 different medications. A healthy person doesn't need a new diet system every 5 years. But a person who is constantly hungry because they aren't eating enough fat, that person is a gold mine. They are always searching, always buying, and always sick enough to need help, but not dead enough to stop paying. I chose to opt out of the circus. I went back to the foods that had worked for thousands of years before the 1950s ever happened. I went back to the fats that build the brain and the proteins that build the heart. People tell me I'm lucky to be 103. I tell them luck has nothing to do with it. It's about refusing to believe a lie, even when the whole world is shouting it at you. I'm going to tell you something now that might be even harder to swallow than a raw egg. You can follow my exact menu to the letter. You can eat the beef, boil the potatoes, and drink the milk until you're blue in the face. But if your spirit is rotten, none of it will save you. I have seen it happen with my own eyes, and the clearest example I can give you is a man named Walter. Walter lived just 3 houses down from me back in the 80s. If you had looked at him on paper, he was the ideal healthy human being. He was obsessed with longevity long before it was a trend. He read every health book that came off the presses. He exercised for exactly 60 minutes every morning. He ate what the doctors told him to eat, lots of sprouts, lean white meats, and gallon after gallon of filtered water. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, and he went to bed at exactly 9 o'clock every night. By all the rules of modern medicine, Walter should have outlived us all. But Walter died at 68. The official cause was cancer, a fast-moving, aggressive sort that took him in less than 6 months. The doctors called it a genetic fluke or unlucky environmental exposure. But I lived down the street from Walter for 30 years, and I know exactly what killed him. It wasn't the food, and it wasn't his genes. It was bitterness. Walter spent 40 years of his life carrying a grudge against his younger brother over a dispute about their father's inheritance. It was a small thing, really, a piece of land and some old equipment, but Walter turned it into his life's work to be angry about it. He rehearsed the arguments in his head while he was jogging. He talked about the injustice while he was eating his steamed vegetables. He carried that hate around like a heavy backpack full of jagged rocks, and he never, ever let it down. You see, hate is a biological event. When you stay angry, your body stays in a state of war. Your heart beats faster, your breath stays shallow, and your blood becomes a soup of stress chemicals. You can feed that body the finest nutrients on earth, but if you are constantly poisoning the well with resentment, those nutrients can't do their job. The cancer didn't kill Walter. The hate just paved the road for it. I've watched this pattern repeat over and over again. People who are obsessed with purity in their food, but have absolute filth in their hearts. They judge their neighbors, they scream at the television, and they nurture old wounds as if they were prize-winning roses. And then they wonder why they feel sick. I made a choice a long time ago. I decided that I wasn't going to carry anyone else's baggage. I've been wronged just like everyone else. I've been lied to, I've been cheated, and I've been let down by people I trusted. But I forgave them. Not because they deserved it, most of them didn't. I forgave them because I deserved peace. I didn't want to be 68 years old and dying of an inheritance dispute. I forgave my own mother, who was a cold, hard woman who didn't know how to show affection. I carried the weight of her disapproval for decades, trying to earn a love that wasn't hers to give. When I finally let it go, I felt like I had lost 50 pounds overnight. My digestion improved. My sleep deepened. My skin cleared up. That was the day I truly started aging backward. If you want to live to be 103, you have to keep your internal house clean. You have to laugh at the absurdity of it all. You have to look at the person who cut you off in traffic and realize they're probably just having a bad day, instead of making it your personal mission to ruin theirs. Walter had the perfect diet, but he had a toxic soul. I have a dangerous diet, but I have a heart that is at rest. I'll take my eggs and my peace of mind over a sprout salad and a grudge any day of the week. At the end of the day, your body is just a mirror of what's happening in your head. If you want to be strong, you have to be kind, especially to yourself. As I sit here at 103, looking back over the vast landscape of a century, I see a common thread among the people who didn't make it to this seat. It wasn't just the food they ate or the doctors they listened to. It was a disease of the mind that I call someday syndrome. You see, most people don't actually live their lives. They rehearse for a life they plan to start someday. I see it in you too. You're waiting for the right time to be happy. You're waiting until you lose 10 pounds to go to the beach. You're waiting until you have a certain amount of money in the bank to take that trip to the mountains. You're waiting until you're healthy enough to finally start doing the things you love. Let me tell you something about someday from the perspective of someone who has seen 37,000 of them. Someday is a ghost. It is a mirage that recedes every time you take a step toward it. I had a dear friend named Betty. We worked together at the telephone company back in the 1960s. Betty was a wonderful woman, a hard worker, and a soul made of pure gold. But Betty was a professional waiter. She spent 40 years talking about what she was going to do when she retired. She had a shoebox full of clippings, photos of the Oregon coast, recipes for the pies she was going to bake in her little seaside kitchen, and brochures for a bakery she dreamed of opening. "Just 10 more years, Dot," she'd tell me over our lunch break. "Then I'm finally going to start living. I'll walk the beach every morning, and I'll make the best blackberry pies on the Pacific." Betty never saw the coast. She never baked a single pie in that kitchen. She died of a sudden aneurysm at 62, 2 years before her retirement party. She spent 40 years working a job she tolerated, saving for a future that was never guaranteed, and denying herself the joy of the present moment. She died with her shoebox of dreams still tucked under her bed, gathering dust. When I buried Betty, I made a vow to myself. I decided that I was never going to wait for a better version of today. People ask me why I'm so disciplined with my 4 foods. They think it's because I'm obsessed with reaching a high number, like I'm trying to win a race. But it's the exact opposite. I eat this way because it gives me the freedom to stop thinking about health and start thinking about living. When your body is fueled and your mind is clear, you don't have to wait to feel good. You feel good now. I see people today spending all their time optimizing. They're tracking their sleep cycles. They're measuring their heart rate variability. They're biohacking their way through a life they aren't even enjoying. They're so busy trying to live longer that they've forgotten how to live well. They're waiting for the perfect metric before they allow themselves a moment of peace. At 103, I don't have the luxury of someday. Every morning when I wake up and see the light hitting the dust motes in my kitchen, I realize that this is the prize. The eggs sizzling in the pan, the steam from my coffee, the weight of my garden shears in my hand. That is the life. If you want to live a long time, stop waiting for the conditions to be perfect. Take the trip now, even if you have to do it on a budget. Tell the person you love how you feel now, even if you're scared they won't say it back. Wear the swimsuit now, even if you don't look like a magazine cover. The greatest lie we are told is that life is a long, slow incline toward a peak. It's not. Life is a series of moments that are slipping through your fingers like sand. The only way to hold on to them is to be present while they're happening. I eat my 4 foods so that I have the energy to show up for my life. I don't wait for someday. I live in the now. And at 103, the now is a beautiful place to be. I look at the world you live in today, and I see a landscape that would have been unrecognizable to my younger self. You are living in an age of absolute overwhelming abundance, yet you are the most malnourished generation I have ever witnessed. I'm not just talking about the food in your bellies. I'm talking about the noise in your heads. You are drowning in choices, and those choices are making you sick, tired, and profoundly confused about what it means to be a human being. When I walk through a modern grocery store, which I still do on my own 2 feet, I am struck by the sheer volume of stuff that isn't actually food. There are aisles upon aisles of boxes, bags, and jars filled with things that were created in a laboratory by people who care more about shelf life than they do about your life. You have 600 types of cereal, a dozen different milk alternatives made from nuts and seeds that were never meant to be milked, and energy bars that have more ingredients than a chemistry textbook. And the noise doesn't stop at the grocery store. It's on your screens too. You have apps that tell you when to drink water, devices on your wrists that tell you if you've slept well, and influencers who change their perfect diet every Tuesday based on a new study funded by a company that wants to sell you a supplement. You are trying to optimize your way to health, but you are only optimizing your way to anxiety. Do you want to know the real reason I eat the same 4 foods every day? It's not just for the nutrients, it's for the simplicity. Every choice you make in a day costs you something. It costs you a little bit of your mental energy. By the time you've decided what to have for breakfast, which outfit to wear, which route to take to work, and which health hack to try today, your brain is already starting to fray at the edges. You are suffering from decision fatigue before the sun is even high in the sky. By narrowing my focus to these 4 pillars, my eggs, my beef, my potatoes, and my milk, I have reclaimed my mind. I have closed the door on the noise. I don't have to wonder if I'm getting enough protein. I don't have to worry if my fats are balanced. I don't have to spend 3 hours a week comparing labels in an aisle. I have outsourced my nutrition to a system that works, which leaves my brain free to do what it was meant to do: think, feel, and connect. I've watched the variety myth destroy people's health. They say you need a balanced diet, but then they define balance as eating a little bit of everything, including the poisons. They say everything in moderation. I say that's a load of horse manure. You wouldn't drink a moderate amount of arsenic, would you? So why would you eat a moderate amount of seed oils, high fructose corn syrup, and chemical preservatives? When you simplify your plate, your body finally has a chance to stop reacting and start repairing. Most of you are in a constant state of internal emergency. Your immune systems are firing at everything you put in your mouth because your body doesn't recognize half of it as food. It's like trying to run a fine-tuned engine on a mixture of gasoline, lemonade, and sand. Eventually, the engine is going to seize. I remember my father used to say, if you can't recognize it growing in a field or walking on 4 legs, don't put it in your mouth. He was a simple man, but he was a wise one. He didn't need a PhD to know that God and nature got it right the first time. The cow, the chicken, the potato, and the grass, that's the circuit of life. Everything else is just a middleman trying to take a cut of your health. In this world of 24-hour noise, simplicity is a radical act. It is a rebellion. By eating my 4 foods, I am telling the billion-dollar food industry that they don't own me. I am telling the pharmaceutical companies that I don't need their maintenance pills. I am taking back my power, and you can do the same. You don't have to eat my exact 4 foods, though I've told you why they work. But you do have to find your own foundation. You have to quiet the noise, stop chasing the next big thing, and return to the basics. Find the foods that make you feel strong, clear, and vibrant, and then have the courage to stick with them. The world will call you boring. The doctors will call you crazy. But while they're busy being exciting and rational, you'll be busy being alive. As I look toward the horizon of my life, I realize that the most important part of my story isn't what I put in my stomach, but what I let go of from my heart. At 103, I am often asked what it feels like to be at the end. People expect me to be afraid, or perhaps regretful, looking back at the decades that have vanished like mist in the morning sun. But I don't feel like I'm at an end. I feel like I am a finished masterpiece, and the final strokes of the brush are the ones made with the most love. The true secret to longevity, the one that even my 4 foods can't replace, is the art of forgiveness. I've lived through a century of human messiness. I've seen families torn apart over money, friendships ended over a misunderstood word, and hearts broken by the weight of expectations. I've seen people hold on to a wrong for 50 years, nursing it like a sick child, until the anger becomes the only thing they have left. I've had plenty of reasons to be bitter. I remember a business partner who cheated my husband out of his life savings in the 1950s. I remember a friend who spread lies about me when we were young mothers. I remember the sharp, cold sting of being overlooked and undervalued simply because I was a woman. If I had kept those fires burning, they would have consumed me long ago. I made a choice in my 70s, the same time I started my 4-food menu. I decided that my body was a temple, and I wouldn't allow ghosts to live in it. I went through the rooms of my memory and I forgave everyone, every single person. I didn't do it because they asked for it. I didn't do it because they were sorry. I did it so that when I sat down to my beef and potatoes, I wasn't sharing my table with my enemies. You see, resentment is a heavy lifting job. It takes calories to be angry. It takes a toll on your heart rate to stay resentful. When you let it go, your biology changes. Your blood pressure drops. Your sleep deepens. Your body stops producing the fight or flight chemicals that age your cells before their time. Forgiveness is the ultimate anti-aging serum. People think that because I'm 103, I must have some magical secret that makes me better than them. But I'm just a woman who decided to stop fighting the world and start living in harmony with it. I eat the foods that the earth provides. I drink the milk that the animal offers. And I offer the world the same kindness that I hope to receive. I want you to take a long, hard look at your own life. Are you eating for health, or are you eating for comfort? Are you listening to the experts who change their minds every decade, or are you listening to the quiet wisdom of your own blood? Most importantly, are you holding on to a piece of coal, hoping it will burn someone else? Drop the coal, eat the eggs, drink the milk, walk in your garden. I am Dorothy Sterling, and I am living proof that the rules are meant to be questioned. I have outlived the scoffers, I have buried the critics, and I have found a peace that passes all understanding. My kitchen is quiet now, the sun is setting, and I'm about to cook my final meal of the day. It will be beef, it will be potatoes, and it will be perfect. If you have stayed with me this long, it's because something in my story has resonated with a part of you that is tired of the noise. You are tired of the confusion, the pills, and the endless search for a miracle. The miracle is in the simplicity. It is in the courage to be boring in a world of frantic excitement. Do not go back to the way you were living 5 minutes ago. Take one step toward simplicity today. Whether it's clearing the clutter from your pantry or clearing the clutter from your heart, do it now. I have shown you the blueprint. I have given you the menu. The rest is up to you. I won't be here forever, but the truth I've shared with you will be. Carry it forward. Live a life that is honest. Eat food that is real. And never ever let an expert tell you that you don't know how to live. At 103, I can tell you, the view from the finish line is magnificent, and I hope to see you here one day, with a clear mind, a strong heart, and a plate full of exactly what you need. I am standing here at the threshold of my second century, and as I look at the world through my kitchen window, I see a horizon that stretches far beyond my own time. There is a weight to being 103, not a heavy weight, but a significant one. It is the weight of being a bridge. I am the bridge between a world that understood the rhythm of nature and a world that has largely forgotten how to speak its language. When I'm gone, the experts will likely come back to this house. They'll want to study the floorboards, analyze the traces of minerals in my water, and try to find a genetic marker that explains why Dot Sterling didn't crumble when they said she would. They'll look for a complicated answer because they are trained to believe that life is a puzzle to be solved rather than a gift to be lived. They won't find it in a test tube. They won't find it in a data point. The legacy I leave behind isn't a bank account or a piece of land. It is the realization that you are the ultimate authority on your own life. For too long you have been taught to outsource your intuition. You have been told that you aren't smart enough to know what to eat, that you aren't qualified to understand your own health, and that you must constantly look to a screen or a man in a white coat to tell you if you're doing okay. I am here to tell you that the experts have been wrong about me for 40 years, and they are likely wrong about a great many things regarding you. The human body is not a machine that wears out. It is a living organism that responds to truth. When you feed it the 4 foods I've described, the life-giving fats of the egg, the grounding strength of the beef, the slow energy of the potato, and the living enzymes of raw milk, you are speaking a language the body understands. You are providing the building blocks of resilience. But more than that, you are practicing a form of self-respect that is rare in this modern age. I want you to imagine a life where you aren't afraid of aging. Imagine waking up at 80, 90, or 100 and feeling the same spark of curiosity you had when you were 10. Imagine your mind remaining an open book, your hands remaining steady, and your heart remaining open to the world. It is possible. I am the evidence. But it requires you to step out of the herd. It requires you to be the crazy one who refuses the processed snacks, the stubborn one who won't take the unnecessary pill, and the boring one who eats for function instead of fashion. The people who tell you that aging is a disease are trying to sell you a cure. Aging isn't a disease, it's a harvest. It's the time when you finally get to reap the wisdom of everything you've sown. But if you sow chemicals, stress, and fear, your harvest will be bitter. If you sow simplicity, real food, and forgiveness, your harvest will be as sweet as a summer peach. I'm going to sit down now. My skillet is cooling and the evening air is starting to turn crisp. I've said everything I came to say. I've laid out the menu, I've exposed the lies, and I've shared the quiet secrets of my heart. The 60,000 characters don't matter as much as the one single truth. You have the power to thrive. Don't wait until you're 103 to start listening to yourself. Don't wait until the experts are in the graveyard to realize they didn't have the map. Start today. Start with your next meal. Start with the next person you need to forgive. I am Dorothy Sterling, and I am not a miracle. I am simply a woman who refused to break. I am a woman who ate her eggs, loved her family, and never let the world dim her light. And if I can do it, starting in a dust storm a century ago, then surely with all the beauty and opportunity in front of you, you can do it too. I've given you the map and I've shown you the destination, but I cannot walk the path for you. Most of you will watch this, nod your heads, and go right back to the noise. You'll go back to the boxes, the pills, and the experts who are half your age. But a few of you, the ones who can feel the truth in your bones, you're going to change. If you are one of those few, I want you to do two things. First, I want you to leave a comment below. Don't just say thanks. Tell me one thing you're going to simplify today. Is it your plate? Is it your heart? Tell me so the world knows you're still listening. Second, if you believe that this message of simplicity and strength needs to reach a world that is drowning in confusion, then share this story. Not for me, I've had my fill of the world, but for the people who are still lost in the fog. And if you want to stand with the few of us who still believe in the old ways, subscribe to this channel. We aren't just making videos, we are building a legacy of the unbroken. Take care of your engine, honor your soil, and for heaven's sake, eat the yolk.